Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Dog Trainers Podcast. This is episode 6. We're excited to have you here. Stay tuned.
Welcome to the Dog Trainers Podcast, a podcast created by dog trainers for dog trainers or anyone who's ever fallen in love with man's best friend.
Episode 6, Sustaining Balance During the Covid-19 Lockdown.
Welcome back, everybody. My name is Brent, and that's Mariano. We want to welcome you guys to episode 6 of the Dog Trainers Podcast. Now, if I'm pretty sure you guys are in the same boat as we are. Due to this coronavirus situation, we have also been put on lockdown in our own homes. As many businesses, they've had to close their doors. They've had to send employees home. So what we're doing is we are doing our best to really make sure that we can provide content and add value still to you guys, even though we are locked down to our homes. So today's episode, what we want to do is we want to actually go over some of the benefits and disadvantages of being at home alone with our dogs. We want to be able to give you guys some tips on how to capitalize on this new time that we have, this new FaceTime that we have with our pets. And we also want to warn you guys and educate you guys on potential good things and bad things that may come from this social distancing from each other. In regards to dogs. I'm not an anthropologist in regards to dogs. So stick around, guys. We can't wait to really share some of that knowledge with you. Go ahead, Mariano.
Yeah. So the way that we look at this thing, like anything, there are two sides to this coin. So there's the potential for positive, there's the potential for negative. Now, the situation we're looking at now, it's definitely a tough one. I know that we have this whole virus thing and everyone's confined to their houses. Brent's located in LA, and I know you guys are on like official lockdown for California. Mm-hmm. I'm in Arizona. We aren't, but I don't think we're far behind you. And I noticed that there's certainly a skill to being home for a while and not driving yourself insane or driving everyone else in the house insane. True. And so with people, especially just with my own family, because I'm from California, so everyone's there. With all my friends and family there, I noticed that they're kind of getting bored with themselves and getting annoyed and getting frustrated, and it's starting to show with each other. And I just want to make sure that we are as productive as possible. I understand that everybody's kind of having to make some concessions with this whole thing. And I think that the way that we can best frame this as dog trainers is to try to be as productive and as forward thinking as we can in terms of how can we absolutely maximize this time with our dogs and just make the best of a bad situation. Now, the other side of that coin is exactly that. What can we do in order to stay on top of things? This could potentially be a positive, at least from our dog's point of view, in terms of how much time they spend with us, how much direct active engagement. I mean, if a lot of people are home from work or school, then that opens up opportunities for some fun stuff.
Yeah, definitely. It opens up a lot of opportunities for teaching the dog things, for developing new routines, for working on that issue that maybe your dog has had for, so many years. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And what we want to go over today with you guys is we want to go over some of the pros and cons that may come from this lockdown and this extra time that we have with our dogs. We want to help guide you guys to understand how this could go right and how this could go wrong. And all we want is just the best for you and your dog's relationship.
Right.
All right. So let's talk about a positive. I think Mariano was alluding to it a little bit earlier. Now that we have more time at home, we can totally capitalize on this time to spend it with our dogs and do things with them, teach them skills that maybe they didn't know before. However, on the negative side, there will be a time, hopefully in the very near future, that we have to go back to work, that we can't be at home all the time. That we can't spend, so much FaceTime with our dogs or play with them or walk them every day or throw the ball every day. And unfortunately, what's going to happen is our dogs are going to get very used to it. And so when we, pack up our things and actually head back to work, there is always a risk that our dogs may develop some level of codependency, separation anxiety, over attachment to the attention that they've been receiving over the last couple of weeks. And so what we'll talk about a little bit later in the podcast is how to curb that. If you guys have listened to our episodes 4 and episode 5, we really talk a lot about structure. And in situations like this, where there's such a high saturation of attention and FaceTime with our dogs, I would recommend to go back to those videos and those episodes of the podcast to really just make sure that our structure doesn't waver as much as there's potential for that structure to really shift, and sometimes it may shift in the wrong direction. If you guys have structure, great, go ahead and keep it up. If you guys don't have structure, please take a listen to some of the stuff that we're going to be talking about, because it could potentially save the relationship between you and your dog.
Yeah, it's go time, right? So it's definitely one of those things where it's great when you hear about these things or read about these things, but now is the time to practice. And of course, structure with your dog is a huge thing. Make sure that your structure with yourself is in place as well, so that you can do, even if you know how to do things with your dogs. I know that from a trainer's perspective, when, we've been doing this now for years, and I've definitely gone through those periods of time to where it's hard to get motivated. I mean, you work from home, your TV's right there, your bed is right there. So it's definitely important, I think, to at least try to come up with some semblance of structure throughout your day. And your dog can actually be a huge benefit to that. I think we were together actually before I moved out here. We were reading, ways that owning a dog can be like physically and mentally beneficial, because they get you out and they break up the monotony of a routine. And I don't think that's any truer than it is right now. And so I think it's important to absolutely maximize that time with them, and understanding that structure is a mental game. Routine is a mental game. So get up and get out and do things with them, but really delve into it. I mean, I don't want like idle hands and idle minds to drive people nuts. So make sure that you're applying yourself toward the right thing.
Right. And here's another subject that comes up, right? Some of our clients, now that, everyone's on lockdown, they can't take their dogs to daycare. Their dog walkers won't come and actually walk their dogs. They have to stay away from dog parks, as we're no longer allowed, at least in LA, we're no longer allowed to gather 10 people or more in any environment. Right. So unfortunately, what's also happening for some of those high drive dogs, those really excitable dogs, the ones, that need to burn off some energy just to feel sane. Right. These dogs are not getting that. And, if you live in an apartment or a small home, or if you don't have the yard space to actually, exercise that dog the way they're supposed to, I know that you're feeling the effects of this. However, what we want to talk about a little bit later in the podcast is talking about how we can both physically and mentally stimulate our dogs, so that way they can burn out some of that rambunctiousness a little faster.
Yeah. It's funny, when we talk about training with dogs, with or without the situation, but this situation seems to have the potential to exacerbate this kind of thing. But it seems to me, and you tell me whether or not you agree, physical energy is, of course, of high importance, but I think most people get that. And for that reason, it's not as much the culprit of bad behaviors kind of developing in a dog, because everybody knows, okay, well, I walk him, I run him. In fact, that's what they say. I really try to run him 3 miles a day, and I really can't run anymore. Like 3 miles a day times every day a week is like 20 miles a week, and I just can't do it. And he's still reactive toward blah, blah, blah. But I think it's important to point out, it tends to be, in my experience, misguided mental energy that metastasizes into bad things over time.
Yeah. Good way to put it. It pretty much they learn to take that brain energy and obsess over the wrong things. Right. And that could lead to a behavior disorder from the dog. Right. Okay. So these are some of the subjects we're going to be talking about. So let's go ahead and just dive right into it. Sure. I want to start off with saying, for those of you who already have trained your dog, wonderful. Go ahead and keep that routine. We're going to talk about balance towards the end of just this subject right here. But for those of you who maybe were used to outsourcing some of your dog's exercise, outsourcing some of your dog's mental stimulation at the dog parks or daycares, a couple of things that we would recommend for you guys is really take advantage of this time to start teaching our dogs patience, self-control, teaching them to have other hobbies than just hanging out with you. If you guys haven't listened to episode 5, we would recommend to listen to our episode 5, our top 5 tips for dog training structure. And really try and implement those things. If you guys, again, have any questions, go ahead and actually email us at our new email. It's the dogtrainerspodcast@gmail.com. And we are happy to either set up a phone call, a video conference with you guys, just to explain how you could go ahead and take advantage of it. I will also be hosting free YouTube live streams over the next couple weekends, as long as this pandemic is going on, to really guide people on how to capitalize on these issues as well. So I just want to let you guys know, we'll go ahead and put those links in the description. But that's where I would put my energy. If you guys don't have a schedule, I would work on structuring my dog's schedule, which takes time. It takes consistency. It takes repetition. And so take that as a challenge. Now, the other side of this coin, let's say you guys do have structure. Let's say you were used to having the dog walker come at a certain time, taking the dog to daycare, 3-4 times a week. One of the things that could potentially happen is your dog could get very used to the newfound FaceTime and attention that he has with you, right? A little story that I have is my own dog, Dynamite. I remember I was sick one time for about 3 to 4 days. And I spent all that time with him, and I let him, we went on walks, around the block. I let him sleep on the couch with me. I spoiled the heck out of him because I was feeling like shit and I needed some of that, emotional love from him. I would play with him, at least 3 times more than I would normally play with him a day. Just because he was literally the only person there keeping me company and hanging out with me. And it was awesome. I love the fact that he was there for me. Right. And as soon as I got better on Monday, I went back to work, and my dog for the next 2 days would whine and cry anytime he heard my voice. Right. And so what this means is this actually means he got used to having a lot of access to me. Right. He really loved that amount of time that we got to spend with each other, which, in theory, there's really nothing wrong with it. But in practicality, that stress can actually lead to other bad behaviors that our dogs might lead to. It could be excessive whining, barking. It could be anxiety that leads to destruction. It could be trying to, just there's a number of different things that the dog might do to try and get your attention simply because they like it. Right. So one of our recommendations is we really want to just make sure, because we have extra FaceTime with our dogs, let's still also try and maintain a bit of a balance with, how much of that time the dog has free access to us. Right. So if this means, we go on that mile walk or, that hour hike, whatever it might be, when you come home, give your dog some water, let them go to the yard, poop and pee, but go ahead and give them a little bit of separation and distance from you. Now, whether this is physically putting them away or you just actively engaging in something else, even if your dog is present, right? If you're working in the office, just close the door to the office and let your dog get used to just being away from you just for certain percentages of the day. So that would be my recommendation for the prevention of separation anxiety.
Yeah, 100%. And if your dog's at that place in terms of training to where you can readily expect these things. Let's say if you don't crate them or otherwise separate them from you, and instead you work something that has them actively keep distance, like a downstay or a place command, this is excellent time for you to do exactly that. Do what you got to do, catch up, clean the house, whatever it takes to be safe, look up online and find out what's going on. And when you're doing all this stuff, call your friends and family, put your dog somewhere and let them stay there. And they see you bouncing around the house and they want to engage with you, and they will throughout the day, of course, but for certain periods of time that are highly beneficial, let them learn how to be alone and be comfortable being alone. It's definitely a beneficial thing. I know it's something we talked about in last episode, but again, there's just no better time to practice this than now.
Yeah. And just to reiterate, guys, we're not saying leave your dog alone with nothing to do. Definitely give them things to do. Make sure they have a tasty chew toy with food in it, or their favorite, anything that is their favorite. Make sure that they have things to entertain themselves. So we're not saying let your dogs mope around in the laundry room, just, whining and crying and dealing with it. No, give them things to do so that way they don't forget that they have other hobbies and habits that they enjoy close to as much as you.
Yeah, the one that I learned from you that I liked a lot was take a Kong. If you have a Kong, a rubber Kong toy for the dog, put their kibble in some water so that it'll soak up and kind of blow up over time because of the water. Stuff it in the Kong toy, cap it off with whatever your dog, a bit of peanut butter or something, not like a bunch, just enough to cap so that the food doesn't fall out. And as it absorbs all that water, it gets thick. And so the dog now has to eat its way out. And let it play with that thing. Throw it in the freezer, give it to the dog when it's time, and he'll knock himself out for a good 20 minutes. And by the time he's done with it, he'll be ready for sleep.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a number of different variations of food toys, puzzles. It falls under the category of what we call food games. But yeah, check them out. Kongs, bones. Even bully sticks can be acceptable, as long as your dog's stomach can handle them. There's so many products out there. I guess, however, I would just recommend make sure you stay away from certain types of hides that can tear off and just go into the dog's stomach. So just make sure you ask your local pet store clerk what is the safest toys for your dog. All right.
100%.
Thank you for listening to the Dog Trainers Podcast, a podcast created by dog trainers for dog trainers or anyone who's ever fallen in love with man's best friend.